are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education or how involved you want to be. There's a lot of variables that we take into account, and then we say, okay, here's a plan. You start like this, that's great. And then we review it all the time. And we say, okay, we need to increase it, we're on track, we're not, this is what is happening. Because remember, when you're dealing with assets, the valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's a struggle. Yeah. So there are strategies everywhere from £50 a week up to £100 million pounds, and they're different. Right? They range differently from everyone, but and from country to country, to be fair. Different countries have different tax laws, so different vehicles. But from your point of view, at the sort of normal end, I'm not going to call it the low end because I'm in that boat as well. It's as tax efficient as you can get it. That's where you start. You use all the tax efficiencies, and then you step up into different things.
Hi guys, welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relaks Radio, and I'm super excited to be here because we're going to be talking about a lot of interesting new things. All right, now earlier we were talking about coronavirus. We were talking about how the Moderna jab has actually been approved for children between the ages of 12 to 17, and what that could possibly mean for us in terms of going ahead with the vaccination drive, and what that could actually mean when it comes to vaccinating our entire population. All right. So obviously that's positive news in terms of a fight against COVID-19. However, I also want to very quickly talk to you about how classrooms, or rather, a lot of unions, 7 unions, if I'm not mistaken, have written to the Education Secretary, that is Gavin Williamson, with regard to classrooms needing much better ventilation. All right. Now, we will be discussing all of that, but obviously before we head into our conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can in fact be a part of the show. All right. So text me on 078-524-73473. Share your thoughts, share your opinions. Let me know what your thoughts are. And don't be afraid or don't be shy to text or call, because I definitely won't bite. I might disagree with you, sure, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to, bite you. So don't be shy. Just make sure to text me and get in touch with me. All right. Now, something else that you can actually do is to go like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can also download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. All right. And that way you can actually make sure that you're always informed about the very latest with regard to, the very latest that happens. And you're always updated on the conversation, the latest developments, and what exactly you need to do to, feel better, to make sure that you are safer and updated about everything that happens in the world. All right, especially because at this point of time there's so many things that are happening in the world. All right, so it's always important to keep that in mind, and that way you can actually make sure that you're always informed and updated about all of those things. Okay, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel either, because that way you can check out all of our videos. You can definitely make sure that you know about everything that happens, so make sure to do that. And now let's actually head into the conversation, because before we head into our conversation about how classrooms need more ventilation, I want to very quickly talk to you about breast cancer. I want to very quickly talk to you about how aspirin could possibly be the treatment for breast cancer. Not necessarily the treatment, but it's actually being trialed as a drug that could possibly help people who are dealing with breast cancer. All right, now here in the United Kingdom, breast cancer happens to be one of the most commonly found cancers, right? There are so many patients who are diagnosed with breast cancer, and this is both men and women, right? And I know it's very rare for men to get breast cancer. However, it's not impossible. So there are some men as well who are suffering from breast cancer, and that is why we need to talk about this. Okay, now the latest research has actually found that aspirin could potentially be used to treat breast cancer. Aspirin could potentially help all of these people to help all of these people to be treated, especially if they have breast cancer. And essentially what that means is that this is absolutely positive news, because there are so many people who are struggling to find treatment for breast cancer, especially if you come from certain parts of the world. The treatment is not available, right? And the other thing is, cancer treatment is so expensive, right? So obviously, to be able to afford cancer treatment, that in itself is a whole other discussion, right? And probably a discussion we could have some other time. However, I feel like we need to talk about how aspirin is going to give a lot of hope and a lot of positivity for women who are dealing with breast cancer, right? And the reason I want to talk about that, obviously, is that a lot of these women, especially because of the kind of things they've had to go through in terms of treatment, especially during the pandemic. Treatment got postponed if it was an immediate. Screening services weren't open, and that caused a lot of chaos, right? So obviously, to help these women, obviously to make sure that these women are much safer, it's amazing that we have aspirin that might actually help them to fight this. So how exactly this is going to work is by the aspirin treatment is going to be used along with the immunotherapy treatment, because they found that aspirin can actually help tumors to be much more sensitive to immunotherapy. All right, so that is what that is. Now make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to discuss more of this. But obviously, until then, make sure that you stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relaks Radio, and I am super excited to be here because we're having a very important and interesting conversation, I might add, with regard to coronavirus, the latest developments in the world with regard to basically everything and anything that happens. And also, we're keeping ourselves updated with the news. All right, so to make sure you want to make sure that you're a part of the show, all you need to do is just text me or call me on 07852473473. All right, let me know your thoughts, let me know your opinions. I would love to hear what you have to say with regard to everything that is going on. So don't be shy, don't actually be afraid, because I'm definitely not going to bite. So share your thoughts, text me, call me, let me know what your opinions are, your you're allowed to disagree with me, and I'm allowed to disagree with you as well, right? Because Relax Radio is a space for you to express your thoughts, express your opinions, so that we can have a good conversation with regard to whatever it is we're discussing. All right. And now I want to very quickly, talk about. What we're going to be discussing. All right, because we're now going to be discussing how classrooms actually need more ventilation to protect our children. All right, now this is actually one of the biggest concerns with regard to children going back to school, because classrooms in England actually apparently need air filters to make sure that they are much safer, to make sure that they have better ventilation so that children could breathe and you have better air, right? So classrooms in England need air filters and even monitoring devices fitted to protect children from COVID-19, and also to avoid further disruption to their learning. And this was actually said by school unions, because that's what they told the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, right? Now, 7 unions, right, representing teachers, school leaders, administrative and supportive staff, have in fact written to Williamson asking for urgent action to improve ventilation when schools reopen for the autumn term. All right. And this is also to make sure that there's no requirement for children to wear masks or to be grouped in bubbles, so that they can actually make sure that children can go back to school, continue their education the way they used to, and that they can finally go ahead with their education the way it used to be. Because obviously one thing we've seen during the pandemic is that a lot of children's education has been disrupted. A lot of children's education has had to either be postponed, or they've struggled, and online classes really aren't helping us anymore. Right, sure, that option exists, but this whole experience of learning online, doing things online, it's not like the best feeling, the best experience in the world, because after a while you tend to get really tired, right? Now, this letter that they wrote to Gavin Williamson was also backed by liberal Democrats, right? Because they said that asking for air purification units to be installed was in fact, to filter out the virus, and they also needed carbon dioxide monitors to measure airflow. All right. And this is also following the mounting evidence that coronavirus is in fact transmitted primarily through airborne particles in enclosed spaces. All right. So if you're constantly in an enclosed place, if you're in a place that is constantly air conditioned, well, then that might be a problem, because they've actually found loads and loads of evidence that coronavirus is in fact transmitted primarily through airborne particles in enclosed spaces. All right. And there's also this increase, or rather strong possibility, of steeply increasing COVID cases in the autumn, with some children even suffering from long COVID as a result. Right. Now, we had this discussion some time back as well, and I think we had this discussion, right? And we definitely spoke about how people thought that it was only older people that got long COVID, and that somehow magically young children were immune to long COVID. However, now there's research, and there's also obvious evidence that young children are also can also be suffering from long COVID. They can in fact be affected much worse than adults. All right. So that is what this what this conversation was about. Now, make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to head on over into a small break, and after that we will be back to discuss all of this. So until then, make sure you stay tuned.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen